In 2018, I uploaded my first video to this channel, starting a long-running creative project in the vein of other popular gaming YouTubers. In 2019, I reviewed the entire Banjo-Kazooie series, which became my most successful video series to date. In 2021, I ranked every level in the franchise and determined that you could beat Banjo-Tooie without any backtracking. Now it's 2024, and this channel is coming to a close. It's been an amazing journey so far, and while I'm not quitting YouTube entirely, the channel CloudConnection will no longer be updated. You can learn more about the future and my new channel at the end of this video, or you can check the description if you're impatient, but for now, I wanted to end this channel on a big note, and I thought it'd be appropriate to go back to the series that got me my first big break. The Banjo series is known for many things: its expansive levels, its sizable amount of collectibles, and for just being so dang charming. Part of why it's such a cozy and magical game is its cast of characters, from the main crew to the supporting players to every enemy and NPC that inhabits this world. But which characters are the best and which are hot garbage? That's what I'm here to find out. By my very generous count, there are 282 characters in the Banjo-Kazooie series, and I ranked them all. This is the Banjo-Kazooie character tier list. Now, let's quickly cover the parameters of this tier list before we talk about the characters. My list includes main characters, supporting characters, minor characters, enemies, and bosses, but what separates a character from a non-character? Well, with some exceptions, my basic rule of thumb is, if it moves, vocalizes, has googly eyes or some other kind of optic apparatus on its in-game model, and or has a talking portrait icon, it's a character. If a character is merely alluded to or hasn't made an in-game appearance, they're not on this list, we have to actually meet them in a game. Also, I am not counting most of the collectibles as characters, even though they do speak to you in Banjo-Kazooie. I mean, the Jinjos and the Globos are clearly sentient beings, so they're obviously characters, but I refuse to grant character status to the Jiggies, Notes, Eggs, Feathers, and Mumbo tokens. They are clearly items, and since they only talk to you in this game, I'm ruling it as first installment weirdness / maybe Banjo ate too many honeycombs and he only thought the collectibles spoke to him. This also extends to the talking hazards in Banjo-Kazooie like the piranhas and the sand eels, because I refuse to accept that the water in Freezeezy Peak is a character. As for the tier list itself, we have the standard S through F tiers, but I've given them fun nicknames to help set them apart. From worst to best, we have Burn and Hailfire, Stinky Bunyan, Bland Joe Meh Zooey, Guh, Jiggy-tastic, and finally the S tier, Grant Kirkhope, named after our Lord and Savior. Here's the tier list featuring every single character present in any of the 5 games. I've included a link to this tier list in the description in case you want to fill out your own. That's all the setup out of the way, so let's talk about some characters. First up is the main man, Banjo the Bear, and look, you know how people say a fictional character is literally them? Well, Banjo is literally me. Good heart, soft-spoken, up for adventure, but would much rather just lay in bed or play poker with the crew if given the option. But he grounds himself with a can-do attitude in his gentle nature, which isn't as bombastic as his companion, but makes him all the more likable. And if we're talking iconic video game outfits, the blue backpack, yellow shorts, and the shark tooth necklace combo is an absolute classic. It's hard not to like Banjo when he's constantly making happy noises when he's jumping or collecting a Jiggy. While Kazooie does most of the heavy lifting in their dynamic, literally, Banjo still pulls his weight enough to be a valuable member of the partnership, especially when he splits up on his own and uses that backpack to great effect. It should come as no surprise that he's going into Grant Kirkhope here. I mean, you would be mad at me if I didn't do that. The other side of the coin, of course, is Kazooie, his loyal loudmouth Breagle partner in crime. She's known for being brash and unafraid to speak her mind, but I like that Rare shows that she has the decency to apologize, or at least quit sniping when it goes too far. And moments like her calling Terry heartless for joking about blowing up his child show that she's not an absolute monster, although that could also be latent mama bird instincts. Anyway, Kazooie has the better gameplay mechanics since she's responsible for talent trot, egg firing, flying, shock spring jumps, and every other memorable move in the game. But she complements Banjo's moveset very well, making this a fruitful friendship. Or maybe it's more than that? I'm not here to discuss any theories. Kazooie's going into S tier as well. But you can't have a memorable group of heroes without a memorable antagonist, and Banjo and Kazooie have an absolute winner with the witch, Gruntilda Winky Bunyan. She's undergone quite a lot of changes over the years, from her original witch attire, to an optional thirst trap, to her skeleton form, my personal favorite, to just being a head, to being a robot, which I'll talk about later, to being a head in a jar with a robot body. There is lots to like about Gruntilda, her unique designs, her vindictive nature against the bear and bird, how annoyed she is at the duo's ability to progress, her rhyming, which, actually I've never been a fan of that. I also love that she's this ever-present force to the player, as her constant taunting in Kazooie, the occasional minigame dialogue in Tooie, and her jiggy challenges in Nuts and Bolts keeps her in the back of your mind. I think I like the heroes a little more, but Gruntilda's still going into Kirkhope tier. Next up, we have the objective character of the first game, Banjo's sister Tootie. Now this character didn't make it past Banjo-Kazooie, and that, plus Rare's later references and jabs at her expense calling her a rubbish character, has definitely caused the community to look down on Tootie a bit. But the rubbishness seems informed rather than earned, because I don't think Tootie is a bad character. She's not as feisty as Kazooie, and not as laid back as Banjo, kind of acting as a middle ground between them both. Thing is, the original game was inspired heavily by fairy tales, and the innocent little sister archetype worked well there, but Tooie made things darker, and suddenly Tootie felt like the elephant in the room, and Rare, in their joking way, tossed her aside and made her the butt of the joke. I like her enough that I think she's gonna go into Gah tier. Bottles the Mole is your tutorial character, and we get a bit of flanderization with this guy, as his standing in the series has been marred over time. In Banjo-Kazooie, he's a short and plump yet helpful mole who constantly trades insults with Kazooie while also pointing the way forward. In Banjo-Tooie, he's dead, and the game immediately ridicules him for it, showing you just how little the Rare staff thought of old Bottles. Yes, he was resurrected and appeared again in Nuts and Bolts, but that game seemed to emphasize how weak he was, really emphasizing his nerdish qualities. But I can't bring myself to dislike Bottles, despite how much Rare seems to. He's going very high in Gah tier. Out of all the helper characters, Mumbo Jumbo has gotten the most attention, quickly rising to star status after taking a more supportive role early on. While his original blocky look didn't do him much favors, his facelift in Tooie makes him, I think, one of the most original designs in the series. It's hard to tell exactly what species Mumbo is, and I think that adds to the mystique behind our favorite shaman. While actually playing as Mumbo in Tooie isn't the most fun, I love how he's ready and willing to take charge and be part of the adventure this time. He is a Banjo series institution, and look, I can't deny the power of Ekum Bokum. Mumbo has definitely earned a spot in S tier, I think above Gruntilda. Next up are the Jinjos, and for the purposes of this list, I'm just ranking them collectively as a species, with King Jingling as an exception since he is his own character. Even though the Jinjos are built like items since they stand in place and require you to interact with them, they have so much personality that you gotta love them. Their waving animations and cries for help, their Muppet-esque design, and their ecstatic cry of Jinjo when you run into them, it's all so cute and charming. Which makes it so sad that one of the Jinjo families tragically died out thanks to the Hag 1. Although who knows, maybe one of the Grey Jinjos survived. Jinjo's definitely gonna go into Jiggy-tastic tier, because they are pretty Jiggy-tastic, or maybe Jinjo-tastic. Alright, Jam Jars is the first character that might fall under the banner of Cloud likes this character because Tooie is his favorite game, but I'm making no apologies here. I love Jam Jars far more than Bottles, as not only is his military design far more interesting, I like his mannerisms more. And while I don't care much for Gruntilda's rhymes, Jam Jar's rhymes are bangers, even if some of those bars don't quite rhyme in American English, which confused young CloudConnection. I do wish the other games used him more, because I'm not quite sure why he's suddenly a radio DJ in Nuts and Bolts. But Jam Jars is definitely going into A tier. Right there. Humba Wumba is a character that arose out of necessity, as Mumbo's gameplay sections in Tooie meant that someone needed to take over for transformations. And while making her a Native American shaman does set her apart from Mumbo, in retrospect, it's not the best representation, especially when she says big heap and has a war cry in her theme song. Despite that, I like Humba as both a counterpoint to Mumbo and as a helper, and her transformations are pretty damn sweet. I can't say I care for her roles in Nuts and Bolts, even if they scaled back hard on the stereotypes, but all in all, a solid character. I'm gonna put her in B tier, right in the middle between Bottles and Tootie for now. Sometimes I forget that Klungo has been around since the very beginning, as even though his role in the first game is brief, he is there. It's Tooie where he begins to shine thanks to his increased presence, even if his entire joke is, I get beat up by my master, which is not necessarily comedy gold in 2024. Klungo is one of the very rare characters that I think hit his peak in Nuts and Bolts, as not only does he get a lot of fun jobs, his arcade game is an undisputed masterpiece, and I will not hear otherwise. This guy's gonna go into A tier, I think, right there. Our final main character is the only one to debut in Nuts and Bolts, the Lord of Games, or Log. Now, it's easy to criticize this guy because his first action in the game is to call our favorite characters washed up and criticize the gameplay of the first 2 games. I'd also like to criticize his design, as while a floating computer head man isn't the worst idea, I have no idea why he's got computer mice just running up and down his body, and the fact that his computer design is very retro goes against his whole anti-retro gaming crusade. I'm joking a bit on that last part, of course, but while I don't hate Log, I can't put him very high because he's just boring. Log's gonna be our first entrant in the Banjo tier. I mean, he's not terrible, but not the best. Starting out our supporting character list is Dingpot, a character who is incredibly integral to the lore of the story as he's responsible for getting Banjo to the top of the tower to fight Gruntilda, and yet he's so unmemorable that I often forgot he was there from the very beginning, kickstarting the whole plot by telling Gruntilda that Tootie is a fairer lady than she. And you know, I have a theory that Dingpot knew Gruntilda would kidnap Banjo's sister and intentionally provoked her, which makes Dingpot the true villain of the series. I think he's also going to go into the Banjo tier. Next up is another character that seems consigned to the trash can for no real reason, Brentilda Winky Bunyan, the forgotten sister whose sole existence is to tell you dirty secrets about Gruntilda. And heal you up, I guess. I like the randomized Gruntilda trivia, and using it on the board game to counter Grunty's apparently unfair advantage is great. But as for Brentilda herself, a very boring character. Another one who's just a straight fairy tale archetype that, in hindsight, is all the more odd. I think she's got to go into Banjo tier as well. I think a little bit above Dingpot. Captain Blubber is one of the more memorable characters from the first game, as he's probably the first one who really gives you a quest to help him, rather than the characters in Mumbo's Mountain who are mostly just antagonistic. And while his skills as a ship captain are questionable, I mean, I don't know how the hell he managed to bury the salty hippo like this, I think he's a great character that fits super well into the universe. Considering the pirate game origins of Banjo-Kazooie, I wouldn't be surprised if Blubber is a holdover from that, but with his awesome hippo design and memorable burping, he has to go pretty high. Let's put him in the Jiggy-tastic tier, yeah, maybe right there. From one big tub of lard to another, we've got Boggy the polar bear, whom you meet lying down on the ground, apparently sick to his stomach. So the natural thing to do is launch into his body at a high speed. That's the kind of suffering that Banjo and Kazooie love putting on their friends, honestly, and it's kind of a miracle that striking Captain Blubber isn't the answer to any of his problems. He's quite a lazy bastard, and it's telling that he'd much rather race around Freezeezy Peak than find presents for his children. It's no wonder those kids turn out so bad, but more on them later. Just for the child neglect alone, he's gotta go pretty low. I like him enough to put him above, Log, but he's still gotta go in C tier. Speaking of characters who take a lot of abuse from Banjo and Kazooie, we have Gobi the Camel, who might be one of the most unfortunate characters in the series. He might have a full valley named after him, but you find him chained up in need of rescuing, which you do, and then spend the rest of the game mercilessly beating him up 4 damn times. Then you free him again in Tooie, and beat him up one final time for good measure. And then he got turned into a car in Nuts and Bolts, which, okay, that's not his fault. Maybe you have the case that Gobi should redistribute all that precious water, but it's not worth the physical stress. I like Gobi though, so I think he's gonna go into B tier. Cheeto is the first character on this list who's very easy to miss if you're not looking out for him, as even Brentilda, who you can technically skip, is present in so many rooms that it's hard not to notice her. But Cheeto is tucked away in the far corners of Gruntilda's lair, and only the more explorative players will find him without a guide. It's pretty cool how they incorporated the cheat code mechanic into an actual character, and although Cheeto's kind of a nothing character, he hands out some helpful stuff. I think he's gonna go into low B tier. Again, not a spectacular character, but very helpful. Next up is the mighty Jinjonator, who has the least screen time out of all of these supporting characters, but who plays quite a big role in taking down Gruntilda. Literally, he is the one who shoves Gruntilda off of her tower after Banjo powers up his pedestal. He honestly wouldn't make that much of an impact for me personally if he wasn't brought back for Banjo and Kazooie's final smash, and because of that, the Jinjonator is getting a solid spot. Right there in the Guh tier, but again, pretty low. Banjo-Tooie introduced two new sisters for Gruntilda right at the start, Minjella and Blobelda Winky Bunyan, two witches of disproportionate size and stature. Minjella, the tall and thin one with the incredibly raunchy name, and Blobelda, the short and stocky one with the cat under her arm, are solid enough as assistants to Grunty, but I wish the game did more with them. They barely have any screen time before Grunty unceremoniously and brutally kills them both off. People might not like them for forcing Gruntilda to stop rhyming, but I've already said how I don't mind that. But here's a question, if Gruntilda can speak normally, does that mean Minjella and Blobelda's Yoda talk is also an affectation? Food for thought. They're gonna go into Banjo tier. I like Minjella a little more, but they're basically right next to each other. Moving on to King Jingling, one of the few Jinjo characters that's not just a generic member of the species. In fact, the only one, now that I'm saying this out loud. You might recognize him from his incredible palace, or for also dying at the beginning of Banjo-Tooie. I do like that even though you never have to revisit him, you can walk into the zombie King Jingling's throne room and watch him waddle around, and he even attacks you if you get too close. He's also there in Nuts and Bolts, hosting Jinjo Bingo, but I don't find his inclusion there all that interesting. I get it, you're already planning your next venture, Jinjo window cleaning. He's gonna go right there in the Gaha tier. So, Master Jiggy Wiggy poses an interesting question if you think about it. Are the Jiggies their own species, and if so, why do they have humanoid bodies? And why does the talking Jiggy in Banjo-Kazooie have no body then? Is it just a disembodied talking head? Well, whatever, Master Jiggy Wiggy serves an important purpose in Tooie, being the one who opens up the worlds. He's one of the more serious characters in the franchise, which may not make his dialogue all that memorable, but I like his design a lot. I think just because Jingling has a little more personality, he's gonna go right behind him. Above the Jinjonator though. More helper characters on the way, as Honey Bee extends your energy when you toss honeycombs to her. Not the most overtly sexual character that Rare has ever created, but you can tell they wanted to emphasize that angle as much as possible. I mean, when her name is literally set up so that Banjo calls her Honey every single time, you get the idea that there's gonna be some flirting, confirmed when she calls him Big Bear in return. That's at least enough to elevate her above just another boring helper status, because otherwise she's just standing in a room and handing out power-ups. So she's gonna go into low Gaha tier. Next up on the roster of characters who are probably a little problematic but are still pretty cool, we've got the friendly mayor of Jolly Roger's Lagoon, Jolly Roger. A very camp character who plays hard into the gay sailor stereotype, and while I doubt he was always designed with the nicest of intentions, having these menu items is a bit of a giveaway, it is hard to not be charmed by his enthusiasm and demeanor. I also like him in Nuts and Bolts where he becomes the Jolly Dodger, which is a pretty unique design that is faithful to his original look, but elevated to a different tier. And he's got definitely legit killer instinct on the 360, so there. Let's put him in the middle of Gaha tier, I think right above Tootie. Now we've got Mr. Fit, a character whose joke is obvious right away. He says he's fit, but instead he's fat. Although his actual athletic prowess is questionable given we never see him make that high jump, well, he can at least run pretty fast. I can't say I care that much for this guy. The joke behind him has been done before, and his bragging personality isn't that fun. So it's strange that he came back for Nuts and Bolts, although I guess he is a natural fit for the sports-themed challenges? I don't know, this Aardvark can get fit elsewhere. I'm putting him pretty low in C tier. I kinda like him less than all of these characters actually. Here's the sole supporting character exclusive to Grunty's Revenge, Bozai the Mole, a distant relative to Bottles and Jam Jars. Of course the game would have a mole companion teaching you the moves, and while this guy is far from a classic character, I like him quite a bit. His crazy old man persona is different enough to stand out, although if he were in a game with better dialogue than Grunty's Revenge, he'd easily be even more entertaining. Let's put him in lower Gaha tier, I think above the Jinjonator. Time to talk about some Nuts and Bolts characters, starting with everyone's favorite, Piddles the cat. Yes, I also forgot that Piddles exists, because not only is she literally just a cat for most of the adventure, but given how large Showdown Town is and how small she is by comparison, it is easy for her to fall into the background. Don't really care for her design either, and plus her name is just a synonym for pissing, which might be appropriate, I don't know. This is the first character who is going into the Stinky Bunyan tier, because that's a stinky cat. Okay, here's everybody's most beloved banjo character, Trophy Thomas. How can you not love him and his incredibly stupid look? Yeah, I hate this guy too, but you know what I just realized? This is what you'd get if you tried to make a character ripping off Banjo's design and you put in none of the charm. Think about it, he only wears shorts, he's got a prominent blue feature, he's wearing a necklace. That's all this character is, ChatGPT Banjo. Except even worse because he was created by human beings trying to actually do something and they failed. I can't think of any other worthy character to start our Hailfire tier. This guy can go away. Yet another nuts and bolts character that I always forget exists, Pikelet the police chief. First off, yes, haha, the police officer is a fat pig, good job thinking of that one, you must think you're so clever. Anyway, he's part of the most useless gameplay mechanic in Nuts and Bolts, bribing the police to leave you alone because the Showdown Town Fuzz are so rarely an actual threat. Inside the levels, he's at least a little better as the authority figure who's too lazy to do anything guy, but nothing that exciting. He's also got to go into Stinky Bunyan, but you know, at least I remember that he is a character more than Piddles. Alright, let's bang through the transformations real quick, which I don't actually consider separate characters since it's just Banjo in a different form, but let's talk about them anyway in the interest of being thorough. Termite Banjo is a classic, but it's pretty damn dull, only useful for climbing up walls and I guess looking kinda cute, just not that interesting otherwise. You're going into the Banjo tier, actually pretty low. Crocodile Banjo is much better, firstly being able to attack, and also just being so cute. Yeah, he moves pretty slow, and given that he has far more ground to cover in Bubble Gloop Swamp, he might be more annoying, but forget that, I really like this crocodile guy. You're gonna go into B tier, just above Tootie, I think. Also a big fan of Walrus Banjo, although I can literally say all the same things about this transformation. Very cute, very slow, and I love him. He can't attack though, so I think he has to be worse than Crocodile Banjo by default. Only by a little bit though, because I think they're basically neck and neck. Now, Pumpkin Banjo is not only a fantastic transformation for a Halloween-themed level, but also just an adorable little guy. That's kind of the theme for the Kazooie transformations, you just become a little guy, and that's cool. This might be the best little guy of them all, because while all he does is wobble around, he's just so precious that I can't give him anything less than a Jiggy-tastic rating. But while I adore Pumpkin Banjo, I do have to acknowledge that B Banjo is the superior transformation for one reason. He is heckin' fast. Flying around Click Clock Wood is pretty fun, and doubly so in Cloud Cuckoo Land when you get the ability to shoot stingers. It's no surprise why they brought this one back, it's absolutely iconic. You're gonna go right there. Time for the Tooie transformation, starting with probably the most boring one, the Stony Banjo. Yet another little guy, but all he does is walk around slowly with a not very great attack. I already don't care that much for the Stonies, as you'll see later, and Stony Banjo is even worse. Let's put him in C tier, I actually like the Termite better than him. Okay, the Plunger transformation is adorable and all, and it makes sense for a mine level, but damn, controlling Plunger Banjo is no fun at all. Not only does it control pretty badly with his hopping around, but he's so useless in a fight, and in about 99% of the level honestly, that he can't get anything close to a high rank. You're gonna go into Stinky Bunyan tier, yeah, there we go. Contrast that with Van Banjo, who can move fast, is invulnerable, and makes a really loud noise at all times. That part's annoying, but otherwise Banjo-Kazooie is pretty damn fun. It's nice that after two pitiful transformations to have one that is almost literally a tank. Not quite literally a tank, that comes later, but this one's alright, even if it's really just used to unlock doors. I think you're gonna go in low B tier, right about there. Submarine Banjo follows in a similar vein as the Van as a big metal thingy, but while it's not quite as fun as the Van because it isn't very fast, it's got far more use because so much of this level is swimming, and its constant noise is far less annoying, so there. I imagine this was a good compromise as creating a transformation that swims might have been too complicated to design. And all in all, I think he's gonna go close to the Van in low B tier. Next up are the T-Rex transformations, which are conceptually really cool, but gameplay-wise are kinda wasted. I love the idea of resizing Humba's wigwam to get a different sized dinosaur, and having to learn how to roar from another dino as the baby is pretty funny, but these transformations really have no use besides like one or two minor things. Especially the Daddy T-Rex, which is useful for maybe 1 minute of gameplay? I think the baby T-Rex is just cute enough that he's gonna go in very low Gaha tier, but the Daddy T-Rex I think is like very wasted, so he's gotta go in Banjo, and it really isn't his fault, it's the level designers. Now for the transformation that cameoed as a joke in Kazooie, but got actual transformation status in Tooie, where it unfortunately is still kind of a joke, but a mandatory joke that's necessary for 100% completion. Getting this thing around Grunty Industries and shooting enemies with underwear isn't very fun, and the only thing that kinda redeems it is that it's kinda fast. I think I'm gonna put this one just above Mr. Fit. Speaking of transformations that suck to move around, the Snowball transformation is a part of Hailfire Peaks that I never enjoy. Building up its size is far too cumbersome, and especially getting it around the steps of the icy side is a pain in the ass. Not bad enough to go into Hailfire tier, which would be appropriate, but I think I'm gonna put him in high Stinky Bunyan tier. It's just not that enjoyable. Alright, let's talk about Dragon Kazooie. This is a pretty awesome reward for hunting down the Mega Globo, but me personally, I think I prefer regular Kazooie. Sure, having Fire Breath and Infinite Fire Eggs is neat, yet I think the screen scaly design doesn't work as well as her classic red coat. But just for how cool the Easter egg is, I think I'm gonna put it in Jiggy-tastic tier. So, I literally forgot about the Grunty's Revenge transformations until I started writing this script, and that's because they kinda suck. Mouse Banjo isn't the worst, as it is at least tolerable to move around as this one, but the special power of chewing context-sensitive items is uninteresting. Easy Banjo tier, I think like even behind the Stony. Candle Banjo is cute and its fire attack isn't too bad, but it's just not very exciting. Seems like something specifically designed for a challenge rather than a fun transformation that adds a new gameplay wrinkle. Let's put Candle above the Termite. A lot of transformations in a row here. I really don't like the octopus transformation because while it controls well in the water, it's once again not very fun to use. And while it's probably the transformation that reminds me the most of the classic ones, that's a hard sell when it's mainly used in a bad level. I think you gotta be the worst one so far, sorry little guy. Final transformation time with Tank Banjo, which is really just Van Banjo but not as fun. One of the better transformations in Grunty's Revenge, but that's not a high bar. Crossing special platforms and ignoring toxic waste with the tank isn't my idea of a good new challenge. I think you're gonna be just below the Termite. Let's talk about the bosses throughout the series, and you'll notice one thing, there really aren't any in the series besides Gruntilda, with Tooie being the sole exception. In fact, because I already talked about Grunty, the only two boss fights from Kazooie we have left to mention are Nipper and Boss Boom Box, and calling them boss fights is being very generous. Nipper's not a terrible fight, but he's pretty damn easy to beat, appropriate for the second level, and he's just straight up stealing Klungo's voice, although I do like his deaf grunt. I think we're gonna put you just below Gruntilda. Boss Boom Box literally has boss in its name, but all this guy does is hop around and be big, and then not so big when he makes his little sons or whatever. Jokes aside, this fight is either way too easy if you're full on golden feathers, or very annoying because you have to attack him so many times. Plus he's just a box, so you're gonna go pretty low, I think. Right, on to the Tooie boss fights, and again, we already talked about Klungo, and the Hag one is not a character, so it's just the in-level bosses. Starting of course with Target-san, who's definitely got the stature down pat. Kinda weird that the first real boss fight, sorry Klungo, is fought in the first person mode, but I guess Rare really wanted to milk this gameplay concept for all it's worth. Which is fine with me, I suppose, because even though Target-san is really damn easy, I like his booming voice and design too much to pass him up. I think I'm gonna put you right above Tootie. Then we've got Old King Cole, who trades the hide of Target-san in exchange for being even easier. I mean, this fight is pathetic, but I can't hate this little Cole Potato Man. Not just because his admittedly simple design is pretty nice, but because beating him gets you access to Chuffy the Train, a great gameplay feature, so for that reason, he'll score pretty well. Not enough to take down Target-san, but he's very close behind. Now let's talk about a classic Tooie boss fight, Mr. Patch. This guy is awesome. Not just because an inflatable dinosaur with a bunch of patchwork and a big thing dangling between his legs is awesome, scratch that last part I guess, but because the mechanics of this fight are lots of fun. Having to fight in the air is a great distinguishing factor, and while yeah, you could maybe argue that it's just a justification for adding a new gameplay system with airborne egg aiming, just as Target-san's boss fight was for the Breagle Blaster, I'd argue that not only is Mr. Patch a better fight, but airborne egg aiming is a natural evolution of flying in Kazooie, whereas Breagle Blaster is just give Banjo a gun. Anyway, Mr. Patch rocks. Been a while since we've been there, but I think he's gotta go into Kirkhope tier. He's great, and that music slaps. Up next is a boss fight that doesn't rock, Lord Wu Fok Fok. The only boss fight besides Hag 1 that I never encountered as a kid because for some reason, I never noticed a breakable entrance to Davy Jones' locker. Might have been a good thing though, because this is the weakest boss in the game. I love Anglerfish and design-wise he is pretty cool, but unlike shooting eggs in the air, which is fun and responsive, shooting eggs underwater is dull and constrictive, just like in real life. Don't know why I wrote that. Even with the infinite ammo and better water controls for the submarine, I never look forward to this fight. I think he's gotta go into low C tier. Yeah, right about there. Terry's boss fight certainly isn't going to win points for being challenging. I actually consider him only second easiest behind Old King Cole because at least this guy attacks you. But he will win points for A, being a concerned parent, and B, being pretty chill about the whole thing after he realizes his mistake. I'm not going to criticize him for misinterpreting Banjo as the egg thief, although maybe you can knock him for not going out to look for his eggs if they mean that much to him? Whatever, I think Terry deserves a spot in Jiki-tastic tier. Now we've got my favorite boss fight in Tooie, Weldar. I know Grunty Industries gets some shit as a level, but I really love this boss fight. The character is awesome, and I love seeing him slither into the arena with that grinding metal sound effect. It's perfect. And the fight itself is a ton of fun, varying it up between every attack and adding plenty of challenge as you keep going. Plus, I adore how Weldar is simultaneously polite and aggressive in the same stroke. How very British. Character-wise, I do think Mr. Patch is a little better, but I think Weldar's just gonna get the point because the fight is so much fun. Hellfire Peaks is unique in that it's got two boss fights, and they're both very different. One has red skin while the other has blue. One has 6 health and the other times 2. Okay, so the Chili Billy and Chili Willy boss fights aren't that exciting or tough, so it's purely down to their designs, which are simple but awesome, and their dialogue is pretty funny. And honestly, a spicy meat special pizza sounds pretty good right about now. They're going to be grouped up together here in A tier, but I do like Chili Willy a little more with that icy cold color scheme. Minji Django is a boss fight that is buoyed entirely by its concept because fighting this guy is super annoying. Fitting that he'd be the hardest boss in the game, even worse than Hag 1 in some regards, but it's because getting a hit on him is frustrating. Again, unless you bum rush him with golden feathers, but even that's not a guarantee. That said, I love the idea of a random-ass Terminator robot taking the place of Mumbo. It's not just a clever setup for a boss fight, but a really funny twist. Just for the concept alone, I think you gotta go in the middle of B tier. So most of the boss fights in Grunty's Revenge are just Klungo and Mecha Grunty, the former we've already talked about, and the latter we'll get to in a minute. But do you remember the Ghost Pirate? Yep, me neither, and you shouldn't remember it because it's boring as hell. To the Stinky Bunion tier with you. Okay, calling Mecha Grunty a separate character from Grunty is also kinda strange, but you can technically view it in the same vein as the transformations for Banjo and Kazooie. And just like most of the transformations, this one's not great. I like the idea, and it's nice to see Gruntilda fight you with magic and physical prowess rather than hiding behind the Hag 1 again. Still, it suffers from being attached to a very tame adventure on the GBA, and just not having any good rhymes. Definitely not the worst, but I think Mecha Grunty's gotta go right in the middle of Banjo tier. Alright, that's all the major characters done and dusted. Sick of this video yet? Well, buckle up, because we still have 222 characters to go. They're all minor characters and enemies though, so we won't spend that long talking about them. First up on the docket, Gruntilda's Broomstick. Yes, this is apparently a character according to the Banjo wikis, and yeah, it's a broomstick that doesn't talk or do anything interesting, so right there. I think the mouse is a little worse. Spiral Mountain's got a couple of walking vegetable dudes, and first on our list is Topper the Carrot. These guys are pretty boring, but Topper at least gets points above the others for having a bright color. I'll put you right there. The other three, Ball the Onion, Collywobble the Cauliflower, and Quarry the Boulder, can really be summed up in just a few words. Boring spherical masses. The names are clever, but ultimately these folks don't leave that much of an impression. We're gonna put the Onion, I think, right there. The Cauliflower right behind. No, I said behind. And the Boulder's gotta go in dead last, it is just a rock. Once you step inside Grunty's lair, you'll soon come across her faithful servants, at least in the first game, the Gruntlings. Their little rar when they spot you is funny, and I like the different color schemes as you get further through the lair. Not a bad enemy at all. We're gonna put you in low-mid B tier. While the Gruntlings are a good regular enemy, I can't say the same for the Grublins and Mumbo's Mountain. I don't really like their purple design, looks a bit too Barney-ish for me, and their nyeh is far less cool than the Gruntlings' vocalizations. Let's put you in the middle of Banjo tier. Next up is the bull enemy Big Butt, who is a goddamn liar. Look at that butt, it is far from big, and it's one of the smallest things about him. That said, it's pretty cool how the game throws one of these bigger enemies your way right in the first level, and while his name is a bunch of bull, he is a solid enemy. You're gonna go just above Honeybee. Now, considering you're a bear who loves eating honey, having a beehive spawn a bunch of honeycombs makes so much sense. And I love that the beehive is sentient and does not appreciate being destroyed to serve your purpose, and is not above retaliating by enlisting an army of bees. Truly a memorable foe. I think enough to get it up into A tier. I think he's pretty jiggy-tastic. Next up we have Donkey Kong. Oh, sorry, Konga the Ape, who was a fun little involved character in Mumbo's Mountain, but who really stepped it up in Banjo-Tooie as the ticket collector of the Big Top. I mean, look at that hat. That's the kind of style we need far more of. Certainly not less of. You're gonna go in A tier as well. Next up, we have Diddy Kong. I sympathize with Chimpy because he just wants a yummy yummy orange, but this is just a little monkey. And more like wimpy, am I right? Yeah, whatever. I think you're gonna go in high C tier, just below Log. Juju is just a spinning totem pole that eats eggs. Boring. Right there, just above the boomstick. Or broomstick, whatever, this is an Evil Dead. Now we have A Bug's Life. I mean, Ticker the Termite, which is an okay enemy, but not really to my liking. The best part about them is how jealous they are of Termite Banjo's look, but otherwise, I think you're gonna go right above the Termite. I think that's appropriate placement. Alright, you wanna know how to scare a Banjo-Kazooie fan? Just play this music. Yeah, you know what that song means. It's Snacker the Shark. A persistent threat in Treasure Trove Cove, and I guess that one part of Rusty Bucket Bay, this shark makes swimming around this sandy resort far more of a pain. You're not spending so much time in the water that Snacker detracts from the level, but he's feared among the fan base for a reason. And I gotta respect that, so I think you're gonna go right about there. There's not much to say about Snippet the Crab, it's just kind of a crab enemy that requires more damage to take down. A simple idea executed simply. And for that, you're gonna go right there. Leaky is a character that has always confused me. Why the hell are eggs gonna patch up a leaky bucket? I think this guy just wants to eat eggs and drain water from the sandcastle. Actually, let's do a quick count of characters whose entire personality is feed me egg, yum yum egg. With Leaky and Juju, that brings the count to 2. Anyway, I think Leaky's gotta go into C tier, just above the candle. Black snippets are the same as the other snippets, but their colors are cooler. So you're gonna go right above them, right there. Come on, tier list, there we go. Now let's get one thing clear, Yum Yums and me have never gotten along. Not because they're tough to deal with or anything, although the fact that they eat your resources makes them intrinsically more dangerous, but because the idea of a giant hopping clam with spindly eyes freaks the shit out of me. Yeah, you're going into Burn and Hailfire, but I still think Trophy Thomas is worse. Lockup is just a big treasure chest with random teeth. Boring. There we go. Little Lockup is just a small treasure chest without the random teeth, at least on the model. Boring. I guess you can go one notch above Lockup because, I don't know, the gold trimming is nice. Shrapnel is just a sea mine. Boring. Although I guess it's fun seeing them come back in Tooie as a target for the submarine. I think you're gonna go right below the cauliflower. Now we've got characters whose entire thing is practical rather than being a good character, the Warp Cauldrons. All they do is help you get around Grunty's lair faster, and that's to your benefit, so I think we gotta give it in low Gaha tier, because again, the character-wise, nothing. Clanker's Cavern immediately makes it clear how tougher it is with the Grill Chompas, giant creatures that lurk in the wall waiting to chomp at you when you get too close. And you have to get too close to walk along these pipes and collect notes, so it's not like you can avoid them. That's what makes them so memorable though. I think you're gonna go right there, low to mid Gaha tier. The titular Clanker is a character that just makes me feel sad. He's a big metal shark whose entire existence is to eat garbage, and he clearly doesn't want to do that. You could argue that his groans make him an eerie presence, and evidently the man owns a whole cavern, so he's not doing that bad, but I like the idea of a giant metal monstrosity too much. Also, Vor character. You're gonna go in kinda high on Gaha tier actually. I like Clanker quite a bit. This is Gloop. Gloop gives you air bubbles and doesn't talk. Great, but dull. Yeah, you're gonna go pretty low in Banjo tier. I'm putting you above the broomstick, but not by much. I like the colors on the Muty snippets the worst, honestly, although I get that sickly green is due to radiation. It just doesn't look that appealing, so I'm not gonna rate them very highly. Right about there. It is gonna get very hard to get specific rankings with all these little minor characters and enemies. Okay, you might not consider this next one a character, but up next is Whiplash, aka those vines that whip around in place and block your path. There are definitely obstacles, but whether they're actually a sentient being is all but deconfirmed. Still, they're an enemy, and we've gotta rank them, and on that front, don't like them. Gotta put you in Stinky Bunyan tier, I guess. Now we have a chump, and appropriately, his name is Chump. Unlike the Bubba from Super Mario 64, this giant fish is very forgettable. I didn't even realize until making this video that you could damage him. I thought he was just a hazard that you had to avoid, which is very easy to do because slow. In any case, not a high scoring character. I think you're even worse than the boulder. I mean, like, I completely forget that this character exists every single time I play the game. Next up are the Croctus statues, which give us 5 more to add to the egg eater count. But unlike the previous 2 examples, while these 5 statues are just there to munch on some blue goodness, finding them all is a good way to explore Bubble Gloop Swamp, and I love the clanking noise their jaw makes. You might be surprised, but I'm actually going to put them in Jiggy-tastic tier. I like them a lot. Coming up next, we have the character with the distinction of being the very first one we see on screen in Banjo-Kazooie. Can you guess who it is? That's right, it's Buzzbomb the Dragonfly, who makes a dramatic appearance flying around the splash screen and crashing into the Rare logo like a doofus. And that's what he is, a big doofus that is otherwise pretty bland. Because I mean, like, that trivia aside, like, this is just a dragonfly, so, yeah, right there. The red flibbits are just frogs, but the red coat looks pretty neat. I think you're gonna go right behind the walrus. The yellow flibbits are also just frogs, but not only do they have a jiggy for you, but I really like the yellow coat. Not often that I like yellow colored things, banjo shorts notwithstanding, but these little amphibians win the day. Yeah, you're going into Jiggy-tastic tier as well. These rankings might seem random, but whatever, it's my video. Here we have a character that's all about dichotomy. Tank Tup's dialogue implies that hitting his feet feels good, while his screams of pain implies that hitting his feet feels bad. So which is it, game? Also, Vor character. I don't hate Tank Tup, but I guess, he's still gonna go in Banjo tier. Tip Tup's been around for longer than most of the characters on this list, even beating Kazooie and Gruntilda to the punch thanks to his appearance in Diddy Kong Racing. That history makes Tip Tup far more memorable, even if he never really mentions his kart racing background. Wish this series used him more, but an appearance in the first 2 games ain't bad. I think you're gonna go in the middle of A tier, like just above Terry. Okay, I'll say it, the Tip Tup choir isn't really that musical. I mean, are they even singing on key? And this objective is very tedious, so meh. You're just kind of plot objects, so I'm gonna put you just below Gloop. Mr. Vile is quite a crocodile, and one of the few non-enemy NPCs that's outwardly aggressive towards you from the jump, which I actually really like. But it makes sense, he's a croc who just wants some food, and you're a rival crocodile invading his turf. Speaking of, I didn't include the crocodile that makes up Mr. Vile's home because it's set decoration, but if I did, Vor character? Whatever, Mr. Vile is a fun little tertiary antagonist. You're gonna go, I think, just above Conga. I like you quite a lot, Mr. Vile. The Yumblies and Grumblies are basically non-characters, even the wikis list them as objects, but I guess they can have some credit for being, I don't know, distinct from each other? I'm sorry, I had to add these 2 very last minute because I completely forgot they were a thing, so can we just put them both in Banjo tier and move on? Right there, right there. That'll do it. Earlier I mentioned that Boggy is kind of a bastard, but when a bastard has his own little bastards, you know they're gonna be trouble. All the kids are fine enough in Kazooie, just kind of in the background crying about their missing presents, and I guess their dad, but in Tooie, they really take a dip. Groggy got to be a big boy, and you know what that means? Fat jokes, burping and farting noises, and being unable to walk. It's so funny that I forgot how to laugh. Yeah, you're going into Hailfire tier for sure. I hate what they did to you. Moggy is a brat, plain and simple. Annoying, refusing to listen to reason, and a liar. I know that in the real world it's on the parents to make sure that their kid doesn't turn out like this, but in this fictional world where the consequences don't matter, blow the child up. And just because you can do that, I think I have to give them the point above Trophy Thomas. I'm gonna be very surprised if Trophy Thomas does not stay at the bottom of the Hailfire tier. Soggy is at least a reasonable kid, all she wants are fries, and she'll head back to her mom without any drama. Not like her dumb idiot brothers, but because she has such a minor presence, she can't go higher than C tier. So let's put you right there. I don't mind you, Soggy. Chinker is just an ice cube, but then he becomes more ice cubes. Boring. Yeah, right there, just below the Tip Top choir. The Twinklies are just Christmas lights. Boring. I mean, they actually are gonna go pretty high in Banjo tier, because at least they are, like, kind of memorable, but they're not that distinct. I don't want to know what kind of physiological flim-flammery has to go on for a creature to consume nothing but light bulbs to the point that their name directly refers to their dietary habits, but whatever, the Twinkly Munchers. And the fact that they eat Christmas lights is the only interesting thing about them, because otherwise, they are just little goblins. I guess you can go right there, below Dingpot. Okay, I love the idea of Sir Slush the Snowman being a big old snow bro who throws snow to and fro, and that's gonna win them a lot of points. But actually facing them, damn, it is a pain, simply because the Beak Bomb kinda sucks in the first game. Still, this is a memorable enemy, if not always for the right reasons. I think you're gonna go in low Gaha tier, right above the Ginjonator. Waza might just be a big walrus, but I love the idea that this giant creature is scared that little old Banjo is gonna eat him. That's great, and seeing him so ecstatic about making a new walrus friend is also great, even if it's on false pretenses. But why is he hoarding that Jinjo empty honeycomb piece and ice key? Who knows? Yeah, I think you're gonna go right there, in the middle of Gaha tier. Trunker needs water. How do you water? Abuse an animal. And while Gobi at least shows some kind of acknowledgement of Trunker's problems, this tree bastard doesn't reciprocate. I think you're gonna go right there. Jinxie is a big boy for sure, and also another character on our feed me eggs train, even if he eats through his nose. I like Jinxie simply because the archetype of guy with a cold has to talk like this always tickles my fancy. Speaking of tickling, get those eggs in his nose. Yeah, I'm gonna put you right there, again in the middle of the pack. The Ancient Ones are liars. They say you can beat the witch by doing their little puzzle and then pull the rug out from under you and are like, lol, no, have a jiggy. Fuck you, Ancient Ones. You're getting what you deserve. Mum is just a mummy. Boring. And for some reason this guy gets box art status? I guess that's cool, so you can go right there. Grabba's a fine enough way to demonstrate the power of the turbo trainers, but otherwise, you're kind of right around Mum. I think a little better. I actually like you a little more than the Stony. Scabbies are just buzz bombs, but worse. Worse enough, I think, to get into Stinky Bunyan tier. Slappa? More like slappa my ass. I don't know, this is just Grubba again and I'm tired. Right there, you can hang out with your little cat friend, pet the cat. Now we have a character that we never see, but who makes his presence well known, King Sandybutt. I don't know what he's a king of, maybe that one maze pyramid, but I don't accept his rule anyway, so shut up. Anyway, his maze is simple, and he has a dumb name. So you're gonna go right there. Ruby's another character who maybe isn't the greatest as far as ethnic representation, but who am I to question a 26-year-old game and its stereotypes? He can play that pipe really well, but otherwise, not that exciting. I mean, at least for having a little more interesting of a design, I think I can put you right there. Histup is just a snake in a basket, because India, also another egg-loving character for the count. Boom. I can commend Ruby for one thing though, it's that he's got Toots by his side. Toots is the best character ever, and if you don't believe me, why else would he return for his very important role in Banjo-Tooie? Obvious S tier, come on, like look at this little guy and his big snoot. On to the Mad Monster Mansion enemies, starting with Limbo. He is just a walking skeleton boy, and not even a good one at that. And just like Mum, he also gets to be on the box art despite not really deserving it. And he's a Dry Bones ripoff. It's not the worst, so I guess you can go right there. Do you remember that this level has bats? I barely do, especially because they're so tiny. I love bats, but Nibbly needed to be way more threatening or way bigger to be worth anything. So I guess you can go at the top of Stinky Bunyan tier. Considering this is a Halloween level, I appreciate that the game doesn't go for a standard zombie enemy and instead makes the gravestones themselves rise from the dead. Ripper is a fun idea and also a bit beefier than most other enemies, and I like that. I like it enough that you're gonna go into B tier, I think just below Sir Slush. Tee-hee is just a ghost who laughs at you. Boring. Right there. As much as Napper is a ripoff of Slimer design-wise, I kinda like his Jiggy. Don't know why he rhymes like Grunty, which would set him apart from the other characters if, again, the main antagonist didn't do the same. But I do love the noise he makes when he leaves. I think that's enough to put you in pretty high on Banjo tier, but still not great. Alright, I debated very hard about putting Lago in the minor character category because he is pretty iconic. He just barely didn't get supporting cast status in my mind. The only reason why he's a minor character while someone like Gobi is not, is because he doesn't have a level named after him. And yeah, he had that one mission in Nuts and Bolts, but so does Gobi, so it's a wash. Speaking of washing, Lago is a toilet whose entire gimmick is you gotta go inside his bowels to get something, and that's true in both Kazooie and Tooie, which I think is pretty funny. So I think you actually gotta go pretty high on the B tier. I think you're up there right with the heavy hitters in the B tier. I like that Portrait Champa is a bunch of bones, but also I think that the paintings are so far out of the way platform-wise that they're not as intimidating. Despite being a giant fish skeleton that jumps out at you, it just ain't very scary. It's still kinda cool, so I guess you can go right there. Alright, you all know the next one. It's the fuck you urns. We all know the story behind their audio by now, and even disregarding that, well, they're just flower pots. But other than that, I don't know about all of you, but getting the egg in the hole is annoyingly precise. And I guess that means 5 more NPCs for our egg eater count. So you can go right there, I guess. It's still pretty high in the stinky tier. Next up is Motsand, who's got a fun little memory challenge and a pretty awesome job just banging on the keys all day long. Not that a ghost playing a church organ is a unique idea, but it just being a hand is a cool twist. Yeah, I think you're gonna go into A tier. I like Motsand, he's pretty cool. Tumblar is just a glass cup. Boring. I mean, he doesn't even have any eyes. I can't give him anything lower than the lowest of Banjo. Flotsam is just a flotation device. Boring. I don't really like fighting these guys either, so you're gonna go pretty low as well. Next up, a character who teaches you not to trust anything, Grimlet. There's these pipes on the SS Rusty Bucket that take you to new areas, although some will just straight up try to eat you. That's not very nice, and also I can never remember where the Grimlets are and where the actual passages are, so blech. Yeah, you're gonna go pretty far down on this list. Next up is the Seaman Grublin. Haha, seaman joke. Anyway, I appreciate that he's far removed from the regular Grublin, even if he is basically just a gremlin in a sailor suit. But that does go a long way in making him a better enemy. You're gonna go in mid to low B tier. Boombox is a box that explodes. Boring. You're right down there. When you meet Snorkel under the rusty bucket trapped under the anchor, you feel bad for him and you want to free him. How do you do that? Retreat the anchor, of course. All fine and good until you see the anchor cleave right through the poor sap. Oh, but he's fine, so I guess all's well that ends well. Again, Snorkel gets sympathy points and points for being a legitimate good deed on the duo's shoulders. Well done, Snorkel, you made it into the high Guha tier. Big cluckers annoy the hell out of me. First, they're just Champas in different forms, so that's not unique. Second, they're fast, and baiting them out isn't always easy. Third, these guys probably die in the most irritating way possible. I don't know why that was cutscene worthy. Yeah, you're gonna go down into the Burn and Hailfire tier, just below the Yum Yums. The caterpillars are caterpillars. Boring. Like, literally the only reason you're not getting the lowest spot is because, unlike Tumblar, you have eyes. Now, I've made a stink in the past about Click Clock Wood's multiple seasons facilitating way too many trips up and down the central tree, but one character I think really benefits from that gimmick is Eerie. You hatch them in spring, feed them caterpillars in summer and fall to help them grow big and strong, and then see the fruits of your child rearing when they become a big eagle in the winter. That's a lovely little thing, and the only thing I don't like about Eerie is how they literally fart out their jiggy. But I mean, yeah, Eerie's gonna go into the A tier. I like them a lot. Whilst I found the Seaman Grumblies a nice change of pace from the original design, Grublin Hoods stray all the way back into ew no territory for me. Whether they're in their full Robin Hood attire or just in their undies, I not only find these enemies too easy to defeat for a final stage exclusive, but also confusing. So you're gonna go pretty down on the Stinky Bunyan tier. Sorry. To me, snare bears seem like just another reason to justify the Wonder Wing, and since they're just kind of a Venus flytrap, it's not exactly the most innovative character design. Not the worst, but I wish it was more inventive. Yeah, right there below the broomstick. Well, look, we're just filling out this Banjo tier, and we got plenty more of them to go, trust me. I feel ashamed to say this, but it only dawned on me in the last year or so that Noddy the Beaver shares his name with the Noddies in Donkey Kong Country. Yes, I am incredibly stupid for not realizing this sooner. Anyway, he's certainly a good pal, asking for help and offering you a reward in exchange, but not offering a way to get into his house until the fall. Where's your Talentrod accessible ramp, dummy? Whatever, it's nice to give Noddy a visit in the fall and the winter. He seems pretty chill. Yeah, I'm gonna put you in the middle of Guha tier. That seems appropriate. Nabnut is a frustrating little man. He eats up all of his reserve acorns during the spring because he has no sense of survival, and then obstinately tasks us with getting his stash back. Do your own damn grocery shopping, you lazy butt. Also, gotta say, as far as squirrel characters designed by Rare, there is someone else who far outshines you, pal. Yeah, you're going into the Stinky Bunyan tier just because you're making us do chores. Here's a character that I actually didn't know existed until putting this list together. Mrs. Nabnut, who can be found sleeping with her husband in winter. I never thought to check Nabnut's house during the colder weather because, to be frank, I didn't really care to see him again. But whatever, he's married and we know nothing else about her, so I guess you can go right there because we know just as much about you as we do the big rock. The Zubbas have had an interesting history in the Banjo series. First, you invade their hive and take their Jiggy, sometimes popping in as a bee to make them a little friendlier. They reappear in Cloud Cuckoo Land as an enemy for Banjo, and also host a shooting minigame for the bee transformation. And I like them. It's nice that they brought these guys back alongside Bee Banjo, although I do wonder what the relationship between them and Honey Bee is. We never get any confirmation about that in-game, so I'll just assume Honey Bee is an expat who formed her own damn hive because she's a strong, independent queen. As for the Zubbas, yeah, let's put them in pretty high B tier. Banjo's pet goldfish Royston is barely a character in the first game. He downgrades from scenery object in the main menu to literally about to be eaten in the span of a single scene, neither of which are super desirable roles. Cut to Banjo-Tooie and he's trapped underneath a boulder gasping for air. At least the team has the decency to elevate his situation a bit. Even in Nuts and Bolts though, he's back to being decoration both for your house and your vehicles. Poor guy. As a character though, he's just a fish, so no real points for creativity. I guess you can go like right below Mecha Grunty, cause I don't know, that makes sense. Our final character from the original game is everybody's favorite, this lady, nicknamed Bikini Girl by fans for obvious reasons. She says nothing and has no real part in the story, and is obviously put in for the sole reason of us admiring her big melons. Thanks, Rare. Yeah, you're gonna go like right there. It's time to tackle the minor characters from Banjo-Tooie, and we start with Puddles. Who is Puddles, you might ask? This is Puddles, Blobelda's cat, not to be confused with Piddles the cat. That's a different bad character. Puddles makes absolutely no impression on the story whatsoever, and I often forget that they're even a thing. Don't know why, considering how terrifying their face is. Just for that, I think you gotta go into the Hailfire tier. Like, come on, look at that. No. We meet Bottle's family early on in Banjo-Tooie, and I really like that Banjo and Kazooie bicker about telling his wife and kids that Bottles got blasted. That is some good dark humor. Unfortunately, I find Mrs. Bottle's generic British housewife getup pretty bland, although I guess that was the point. We can put her pretty high in the Banjo tier. Yeah, actually, she's gonna lead the pack, but there we go. Bottle's daughter Goggles is cool for two reasons. She gives you the Amazo-Gaze glasses, aka the zoom feature, and because she's playing with a Donkey Kong plush. Or a generic monkey on the Xbox version, whatever. That's cool, although I do wonder why the camera zoom was hidden away in an area you might miss completely and never return to? Who knows? I think Goggles can go into low Guha tier, just below the baby T-Rex. Bottle's son Specky is less cool because he's just an exposition machine, although I like his confusion about kickball substitutions, and because his plain toy is not branded and therefore is lame. Still, the Bottles have raised two very nice children, which is more than I can say for some other characters. Let's put you in, right about there. The disciple of Jiggy Wiggy is just Jiggy Wiggy, but boring. So, boring. Right there. Heggy the Hen is an interesting case of salvaging the original plans for Stop and Swap, although maybe Heggy always was going to be the key to opening the eggs? Anyway, character-wise, she's just a chicken with a bit of stilted speech, clucking all the livelong day. That's fine, I guess, but nothing special. I think you gotta go right there, so like mid to low Banjo tier. Next up are the characters I thought were redesigned gruntlings, but are actually their own thing. Uggers. Why are they called Uggers? That would be why. And I adore these little goblins. They are so charming in how dumb they look. I think I'm gonna put you just below Jiggy Wiggy. The same charm isn't found in the grunty dactyls, which are an alright flying enemy, but are kinda lame. Yeah, right. Yeah, I like you a little more than the Grublins at least. Snapdragon scared the hell out of me as a kid, and even today, their rapid biting motion puts me on edge. Not to mention how annoying they are to deal with if you don't realize you can attack while in grip grab, which I didn't at first because I couldn't read. Just for that though, I think you gotta go into D tier. I'm sorry, you are a stinky bunion. You know those statues in Mayahem Temple that shoot darts at you? They're called Sput-Sputs, and while they look a little intimidating and that stone scraping sound gets under my skin, they are more bark than bite. Not the worst idea for a first level enemy, but I don't know, it's not that exciting. We're gonna put you pretty low in D tier, I think. Not below Piddles, but yeah, not that great. Actually, no. You are better than the pipes. I already forget their name. Next up are the Moggies. Not this Moggy, but this Moggy. Or maybe this is pronounced Mogi? Whatever, these are fun little cat enemies, and I love how their screeches are so harsh. These are fun little guys. I'm gonna put them right in the middle of B tier. Yeah, right about there. Globos are a collectible, and therefore not really a character with their own personality, but still, it is moving around on its own. It's on the list. And, it's fine. Just a little creature, I guess. It's kinda cool, so I think you're gonna be actually pretty high on Banjo tier. Okay, you might disagree on the Golden Goliath being a character, as I'm sure some consider it an object, but keep in mind, Mumbo's spell here is summon, not give life, meaning the Golden Goliath already had life before Mumbo freed him from his prison. Anyway, he's a big boy, but just kind of a golden statue. I think I'm gonna have to put you just below Mecha Grunty. Tucked away in the far corner of Mayahem Temple is Bovina the cow, who's got a wee bit of a fly problem. Love her toga dress, but otherwise, I don't really care for this cow. And she makes a lot of stupid jokes. You're gonna go in fairly high on C tier though. This is Globble. Globble says hi. This is Globble when an egg comes by. These are just flies, so it's not that fun, and would these count for the egg eater tally? Why not? That's 4 more. You can go right about there. I don't like you that much. This is Officer Unogopaz. Officer Unogopaz says hi. This is Officer Unogopaz when a stony comes by. Alright, I'm done. I like everything about this guy. His name, his gruff attitude, how he knows your disguise is absolutely dumb, and how he lets you in anyway. All fun. You're gonna go fairly high in B tier. Not above Target's End and Gold King Cole. Right about there is good. I don't really like the Stonies all that much. It's kind of fun that you can't understand their language until you become one of them, but they're just kind of rocky boys. Mostly expositional ones too, so not that exciting. That'll earn you a spot about in the middle of the list, I think. Right there. Hack, Whack, and Crop are big ol' jerks. That's to be expected when a British company puts soccer, kickball, in their games and makes your goalies way too serious about the game. This kickball game has literal bombs on the field, and the worst part is that you can't blow your opponents to pieces. You're gonna go pretty high on Stinky Bunyan tier, but I don't enjoy them. Here's another character I tend to forget about until he pops up. Dragunda, aka the little goblin that laughs at you when you fall into a pit of hazardous liquid. Whether it be quicksand or oil, this guy's always here to remind you how much you suck. And you know what? I will not take that abuse. This guy's gonna go in D tier, and I hate his stupid football mouth. Slumber is a slithery snake who swallows a solid gold jiggy if somebody sneaks up to his shelter and synthesizes a strong sound. And he's solid, I guess. That was way more annoying than it needed to be, but I'm gonna put him here. Dilberta is a prisoner because her passage is blocked, and once you unblock that passage, she crawls on through to find her partner. More on him later. Touching reunion and all, but as far as Dilberta herself, I do like the miner's helmet, but yeah, she's not gonna go that far. I never encountered Chief Blodazin as a kid because it never dawned on me to shoot these snakeheads. Again, me being dumb. This guy's fine, I suppose, but points off for almost saying a swear. He's just kind of a round tuber, but yeah, right about there. You know what makes Glitter Gulch Mine great? It's got Billy Bob, or as I like to call them, Yeehaw. Yeehaw! Yeehaw is the best thing to exist in the Banjo universe, and it is not even close. You know what? Special tier for this guy. You all know what it's called. And there we go. I like Bullion Bill's classic prospector design, and him being a fox with a big ol' mustache is lots of fun. I don't know what kind of partnership Mr. Bill and Mrs. Dilberta have, but I'm not one to judge. We're gonna put you in B tier. Yeah, kind of in the middle. Next up is Canary Mary, and I know, but before we send her to the depths of hell, we should talk about why. I don't need to tell you that her challenges are dumb. It's all button mashing and the difficulty scale is harsh. The first 2 are way too easy, the third is frustrating but doable, and the fourth is pain. Technically that last one is optional if you don't care about going for 100%, but still, it's a thing that exists and she must be judged for it. Second, her design is straight up disgusting. Some weird canary human hybrid that shouldn't exist. Third, I just want to reiterate that the 4th challenge is bullshit. Worst Cheeto page in the game by far. fourth, goddammit, that fourth challenge is bullshit. I don't think many people will disagree that Canary Mary is the worst character on this list, but if you are a Canary Mary apologist, I'd love to hear from you. I think he's gotta do it. Trophy Thomas, you are spared the last slot for now. What if you took Boombox and made it lose any sense of personality by literally just being a box instead of a box person? That's Bangbox. Also, he spits at you, which is rude. Yeah, you're going right in the middle there, buddy. Boom. Diggit is just a shovel. Boring. And like just above the caterpillar, honestly. Now for something super meta, the Banjo-Kazooie game packs, put into the game to help repurpose the stop and swap content. I love how the games themselves become their own characters, even if they're just hobbling around being scared of you. But I like that they were put into the game, so they're gonna get good marks. Low B tier, I think. Alright, so you know how Boggy is a terrible parent for being neglectful? Well, Mrs. Boggy is not only just as lazy as her husband when it comes to actually helping out her children, but she beats up her son for laughs. Not having that. You're going to the lowest tier. Here we have Jippo Jim, a character whose name is pretty bad in retrospect, but who redeems himself a little bit with his cry. It's no yeehaw, but it's good enough. I also really love how they've got different outfits depending on where they are. That's a lot of fun. I'm gonna put you fairly high in the B tier. I think, right there. This guy's Fruity, and also, his name is Fruity. Hee hee. They're pretty annoying to deal with unless you've got the fan, which is very satisfying to run them over in. But otherwise, yeah, I think I gotta go into D tier. Big Al is a disgusting man serving out some disgusting burgers, and I like him a lot. I love the idea of a health code violating staff member only being in the park because they have so little staff on hand, and of course, I mean that in universe only, not that I want that in real life. Those burgers gotta be good though, considering Chili Billy flies off to get some. I think Big Al's gonna go into medium B tier. Yeah. Salty Joe is a salty man serving out some salty fries, and I like him a lot. I think most people who've worked fast food can relate to this guy, interfacing with the public who irritate him to no end. Gotta respect the hustle despite his obvious misanthropy. I don't like him as much as Big Al, so I'm gonna put him right there. I really love the idea of the Minjos as an extra challenge in Banjo-Tooie, weaponizing your instinct to save these little creatures. Don't know why they spark with electricity, but hey, it's fun blowing them up before they even start to attack. I'm not fooled by any of the Minjos anymore because I've played this game so many times, but they are a good addition. I like them so much that I think they might... no, they're not better than Bottles, but they're really great. I used to not really like the Saucer of Peril all that much, either the game or the actual character, partially because I was bad at shooting things. Now I'm less bad, and I like this little theme park ride. His enthusiasm about his job is great. And just so we're clear, yes, the Saucer of Peril challenge in Nuts and Bolts is horrible, but that's not the character, just a vehicle imitation, so no, it doesn't indict this little space dude. Welcome to B tier, little buddy. Let's just take everything I said about Hawk, Walk, and Crop and put it towards your bumper car opponent, Bang, Crash, and Wallop as well. Although in this case, them being jerks is even more fitting because everyone is a jerk aboard a bumper car. So I think because of that, I think they're gonna be the top spot on Stinky Bunyan, if the website will let me, there we go. The pirate enemy Keelhaul may not reach the same heights as Yeehaw, but they come pretty close with their classic cry. And yes, technically the Seaman, Grublins, and Kazooie said this too, but I associate the sound with these enemies, so only they may gain the distinction of ahoy. Get up there, you deserve it. Ahoy is great. Alright, let's cut to the quick. Is Mary Maggie Malpass a trans female, a drag queen, or just a really butch yet simultaneously feminine gal? I don't know, but whomever she is, I support her wholeheartedly. Why else would I venture into a giant-ass fish to rescue her? Oh, by the way, that fish is not a character, sorry. Whether this was a dig at the actual Malpass or just a gag they thought was funny, I like Maggie, she seems like fun, I would hang with her. I'm gonna put her right about there, actually kinda high in B tier. Captain Black Eye is notable for being one of the oldest characters on this list, but not the oldest, as he's a cameo from Project Dream, which of course became Banjo-Kazooie. So he gets points for that already, but I love that they don't hang their hat on that completely. Him being seasick is really funny, and pestering him with dialogue so he'll give you money is the cherry on top. Great Easter egg, but also great character. He's going up into A tier, he's pretty jiggy-tastic, I would say. I can't tell you why, but I dig Pono and his whole vibe. Can't tell if his voice clips make him sound sad or exasperated, it could easily be both, but whatever he's about, I'm for it. And considering I love the seaside town aesthetic of Jolly Roger's Lagoon, I find his shop really cozy. I'd buy that Jiggy for 20 doubloons, what of it? You're gonna go up into B tier, right there. Piggles is just a pig in his underwear. Boring. Right about there should do it. Trotty is just a pig in his underwear, and he's got a third arm. Okay, not boring, but not that much better. You're gonna just be 1 point above just because that third arm at least makes you distinct. The first thing you see when you dive down into the water in Jolly Roger's Lagoon are likely the Blubbles, these wavy anemones who are absolutely grooving. Until you shoot them in the eye because you're a dick. Anyway, their large stature and rapid motions make them pretty memorable, and I like them a lot. You're gonna go into low B tier, right about there. Frazzle is just an electric eel. Boring. Yeah, maybe right there, just below the broomstick. Inky is just an octopus. Boring. I think you're a little better, so you're gonna go below Juju. Swell Belly is just a pufferfish. Boring. I do kinda like pufferfish, so I think you're gonna go below Sandy Butt. I like the idea of the seamy fish as these translucent fish that hold an item as a fun level gimmick, but the fish themselves, not really much to say, as their whole personality is, well, transparent. That was not a good joke, but to be fair, this is not a good character. Now we've got Chris P. Bacon, a pig character named in a contest held by Nintendo Power. And yeah, it's a good one, and no, it's not that Chris P. Bacon. While I don't really like saving him from the piranhas, mostly because of the piranhas themselves, I can't deny the power of this man and his very British bathing suit. Let's put you up into the middle of B tier. Right there. So yeah, the red piranhas. Don't like them, because they're stinky. Whirlweed is one of the most forgettable enemies in the game, confined to one area, the Seaweed Sanctum, and you know, just being seaweed. No thank you. You're actually gonna go pretty low, I do not like you all that much. Let's talk about the aliens inside the UFO buried in Jolly Roger's Lagoon. Alf is the leader with a staff and a bad temper. I mean, he straight up dies by falling off of his ship, and as soon as he comes back to life, he's like, thanks, I'm gonna destroy you. Screw you, mate. But I like the hustle. You deserve a spot in low B tier. Betty's packing heat with those laser guns, but that's not enough to be all that exciting. You're gonna go into C tier right there. Gammo is even less fun. He's got a wrench? Practical but dull. Bah. Now, those are the only 3 aliens listed in the character parade, or at least the adult ones, but there is a mysterious 4th alien inside the UFO who doesn't have a name. I guess it'd be Delto or something? It's just Betty's model repeated though, and I will not stand for it. You can burn in hailfire, but like, on the minimal end of that. Tip Top Jr. is just a baby sea turtle. Boring, but cute. I'll put you in high C tier, right above Dingpot. You know who I really love? Dippy. Probably just because he's a poor boy trying to get some water because he's thirsty. The minute he comes out of his hole and slurps up some sand, my little heart goes into meltdown mode. And I think the solution for this one is pretty clever, connecting levels in a very organic way and eliminating unnecessary backtracking. At least for the Jiggy, if not the Cheeto page. I actually do think Dippy is going to go into the Jiggy-tastic tier. I actually really love him. Bargosaurus is just kind of a Stegosaurus, but I like the crimson textures, and Stegosauruses are cool. You can go up into B tier, little guy, right there. Saurosaurus would be higher on this list if there wasn't already a pterodactyl enemy earlier on. And this one's even less unique. We're gonna put you into pretty high Stinky Bunion tier. The Unga Bunga tribe is a bunch of assholes, and I appreciate that all of your interactions with them are designed to piss them off. First is the one who stole Target-Zan's idol, who you re-steal from, then the one guarding the Oogle Boogle caves who you make poop his pants. The only one that you can't make run away screaming is this one, and he sucks because he's racist against people who wear shoes. Not a fan of any of that. We're gonna put you in Stinky Bunion tier. Yeah, above Pikelet. I like the Oogle Boogle tribe better because at least they seem nice, but warming them up and getting them food is kind of a pain. Still, love the guy who blows his little horn. He gets an S for sure. But on the whole, I think I just gotta put the Oogle Boogles right about there. The Rocknut tribe is another bunch of assholes, standing around in their ridiculous looking armor. So why not send some eggs up their assholes by shooting a Clockwork Kazooie egg straight into their bums? Fascinating. Yeah, these guys can burn in hellfire, I don't care. Okay, Imagine your little CloudConnection booting up Banjo-Tooie and seeing the attract mode cutscenes, and the second one has Banjo and Kazooie jump up to this little mountain, and the music gets all intense, and a giant dinosaur comes out of the water, screaming like a real creature, and then straight up eats you. That shit is traumatizing. Then you play the game and the truth is revealed. Chomposaurus here isn't digesting you, he just needs you to clear out his insides of germs. Great bait and switch game, I honestly have to reward it for that. Also, Vor character. And I mean, honestly, Chomposaurus does look pretty cool, so I think you're gonna go right about there. Speaking of the germs, they're a funny little bunch. For just kind of being round blobs with ugly faces, I kinda like them, especially how they taunt you as they spawn in. That's pretty fun. I think you're gonna have to go into low B tier. Does anybody remember Lunch? He's a character exclusive to the character parade. It's this Unga Bunga right here. And he's dead. I've already forgotten about him. Put him next to the melons, I guess. Whereas the beehive in Kazooie soon learns to get the bees on his side as a defense mechanism, the cursed beehives in Tooie straight up charge at you, which is pretty creepy. I just wish these enemies were around more often, but beehives are actually pretty rare in Tooie, real or otherwise. Still, I think you can go in low B tier. I think just above, that was Alf, that alien. Whichever alien this is. Scrotty is just a Styracosaurus. Not exactly boring, but without anything that special besides just being huge, she's not gonna score high. I'm gonna put her right in the middle, right there. Scrat's got the least interesting quest of the three siblings, since his is literally just get Mumbo, use pad, win. Whatever, but I'm glad he's not sick anymore. I guess you can go in the top of Stinky Bunyan just because, I don't know, he's a dinosaur, he probably doesn't smell good. Scrit's a little guy that you gotta make unlittle, which is fine, I guess. Bringing him to Mumbo specifically on the Isle of Hags isn't the greatest implementation of the connected world of Tooie, but it's not terrible. I think you can go into the middle of Banjo, right there. I feel bad for Scrut a little bit, seeing her in that cage and all, but it is a good message on the dangers of running away from home. Getting her back is easy enough, but what do you expect will happen when you go to Witchy World? Nobody has fun there. I think I'm gonna put you just a little bit above her brother. While Chomposaurus might have scared me first and foremost in Pterodactyl Land, the actually scary Stomponodon is a very memorable obstacle. Trying to avoid this giant foot is a classic challenge, especially because you have to do it multiple times. It's clever that you need to find different ways to do it too, since Banjo and Kazooie have different methods when they're combined and on their own. Not bad for what is merely a disembodied foot that screams at you. I think we're gonna have to put you in low B tier, right there, that seems right. Okay, the mucoids are hecking disgusting. Why Terry thought attacking you with his sentient phlegm instead of, I don't know, trying to eat us or something is beyond me, but I am not a fan at all. Yeah, you're gonna go a little high in Burn and Hellfire, but like, why? Yeehaw might be the reigning champ of funny noises, but you know who takes second place? It's this guy, Governor. First off, love that name. Second off, third off, it might be a stock noise, but who cares? This guy's sounds are phenomenally funny. Just put this guy up where he belongs, and perfect. Look at that holy trinity. Yeehaw, aye, and ahoy. Baza Super Life Battery is just a battery. Boring. You're gonna go pretty low, right there. Clang is just a barrel. Boring. You are just above the glass for me. Toxic Clang isn't just a barrel. It's full of leaking nuclear waste, and that's bad. So bad you're gonna have to go into D tier, right there. I hate Toxigags so much. Dealing with them is a pain, and also they're just a toxic cloud. I resent this cloud representation as a soon-to-be former CloudConnection, and if I wanted to face off against a bunch of farts, I'd just go to Clinker's Cavern. More on that in a bit. But yeah, you're gonna go right there. I actually like you less than the mucoids. Boltoid, Nutta, and Washup are just a bolt, nut, and washer respectively. Boring, boring, and boring. I didn't even bother making separate character images for these ones, that's how little I care. Alright, I don't want to come down on the skivvies too hard because they are the put upon employees of Grunty Industries and they're not attacking you or anything. But they filthy as hell. I'm gonna ignore the fact that their skin gets cleaned by the miracle of washing their clothes because I don't want to imagine a world where you have to shower them for a jiggy. But I am deducting points because getting to these guys with the washing machine is very annoying. And I mean, putting them in Stinky Bunion tier is just appropriate. You know what enemies I really hate? The spy eye cams. They are placed in such awkward positions and they're so small that finding them and their range of vision is frustrating. And they spawn tin tops, which I also don't like. So screw these guys, and you know what? The only way to make them worth it is if they get on the egg counter for being so hungry for grenade eggs. F tier, baby! As I said, the tin tops aren't my favorite, mostly because they spawn indefinitely if you don't take care of the cameras, which also respawn because banjo-tooie! And they can be pretty dangerous, which is another bad thing. And do these also count for the egg counter because they also just love my grenade eggs? Sure. Anyway, we're gonna put them in the bottom of C tier. Next up we have Clinker, the pieces of poop on the vent in the first-person shooter segment, which is called Clinker's Cavern because, I don't know, that was almost a third level's name? Anyway, they fart at you a bunch, which is very cool. Another character who is very appropriately going into the Stinky Bunion tier. Next up we have Clinker. Not those Clinkers, but this Clinker, the speaker guy who talks to you throughout Grunty Industries. Anyway, he's bland and forgettable. You're gonna go pretty low in Bland-Joe tier. Hot Hand sure is a hot hand. Yeah, I don't know about this one. I guess it's kinda cool, so you can go a little higher. Look at this little fire gremlin hothead swooping in on his magic carpet to ruin your life. I hate the placement of these guys as they're positioned to knock you off of perilous walkways, and their little laugh, annoying. Let's put you in the Burn and Hailfire tier. I do not like you at all. You can go right there. Gobgoyle would be just another boring character, but I have to give him credit for leading his shots. Actually, I don't, because screw this guy. Yeah, you're going pretty low on D tier. I don't like you. Biggyfoot is just a Yeti. Boring. Actually, the Yeti design is not that bad, but yeah, you're gonna go right there. Can I say something about Bigfoot? His foot isn't even that big. I'm glad that Chili Willy frickin' ices this dumbass in his stupid toes. I hope he feels that pain forever. I think you've earned your place in the Stinky Bunion tier. I do not feel bad about sacrificing Mildred Ice Cube in the slightest. She is not only rude, but she's got a Jinjo in her ice stomach, and the Jinjos are far more important to me than sentient water. It is weird that I'm putting this Ice Cube into the Burn and Hailfire tier considering what the other Ice Cube character that we're about to talk about does, but well, we'll get to that when we get to that. Now for the actual oldest character on this list, Saberman, a cameo from Rare's game Saberwolf. That's a cool little nod, even if you'd never get the reference if you only grew up with the N64 era. That's me. And I like helping him out. It's good to just do something nice for somebody, and it involves all three playable characters individually. Just for being a cool reference, I gotta put him pretty high in B tier. Right there, looks good. Shard is just an icicle. Boring. But also, it is going down a tier because its cry is just Governors but sped up. You can't fool me, Waterboy. You're going Stinky Bunion. On to the Alien Kids. Rescuing Alfred isn't all that special, but I like his Jinjo plush. Middle of the Blanjo tier. Betette is much the same, except A, girl, which does not change anything, and B, dead, which makes getting her back all the longer. So I think you gotta go a little lower than your brother, unfortunately. Gamete is probably the cutest because all this precious little friend wants is to be warm, and I appreciate using Kazooie's mama bird qualities in an unexpected way. Also, as I said, they are a cutie, although I guess so are the other siblings. But Gamete I think deserves a spot in Gaha tier, but just barely. Cloud Cuckoo Land is known for being a bit random, and what could be more random than a little flat guy popping out of the ground making slot machine noises wielding things like hot dogs, flowers, and candy canes. I love these guys because while they can take you by surprise, I just think they're neat. Like straight up, I am putting them in A tier, and maybe that seems a little weird, but it's my video. By this point in the game, I am expecting more from the enemy design, so having just an evil flower twirl after you is not all that great. Pansy's gonna go right about there, I think. George Ice Cube is better than his wife by virtue of not being annoying, and I maybe feel the slightest twinge of regret pushing them into boiling hot lava. At least that was a mistake, unlike Mildred, who can only be dealt with through malice. But I mean, he is still just an ice cube. And again, it would be very funny if he was in Burn and Hailfire considering what you do to him, but I have to, you know, I'll just put him right next to the other ice cube. How about that? He's a little better because he's got the angry eyes. Not quite sure what to make of the Flotus Floatium creature. It's just kind of a little guy that lets Banjo gets across gaps. But it seems pretty light, no pun intended, as far as gameplay-centered characters. And again, more of an item, so I'm just gonna put him right there. I am not really a fan of eyeballs as a motif. It kind of freaks me out a bit, to be honest, but for some reason, I like the eyeballish jiggy implants. It's just kind of a fun challenge flying around with the bee and shooting these guys. And it's not like a gross eyeball or anything. Yeah, I think he's actually gonna go up a little bit into the Gaha tier. Super Stash is just a safe. Boring. Right about there looks good. For the last Tooie character, we have Guffo the Can of Beans. He lives in a trash can and talks by farting. I guess it makes sense, but I'm not a fan. And he thinks he has a germ problem? No, he's got an I live in a trash can problem. But considering he's about to be evicted, I guess there are standards of cleanliness and he's not meeting them. Clean your damn house, mate. Well, yet again, another appropriate character going into the Stinky Bunyan tier. We're in the final stretch now because we've only got the minor characters from the GBA games and nuts and bolts from here on out. Let's start with the Jinjo Oracle, your hint system in Grunty's Revenge. It's literally just a talking statue and not exactly a fun one since all of its dialogue is information based, so meh. You can go right about here. It's a pretty bad downgrade from the Jinjo-nator. I almost forgot his name. The Gruntweeds have a bit of Peahat energy with how they fly around, and a bit of Gremlin energy because they are gremlins. Not a fun enemy. You can go right there. You're actually pretty low on my list. Mama Clucker is just a chicken. Boring. But I guess she can have a point for the name? Nah, not really. You're gonna end up right about there in the middle. The Bleeders are just sheep. Boring. You're maybe like one step above the caterpillar. No, I guess I like the sheep better than the shovel. As one of the few recurring new characters in Grunty's Revenge, Mr. Ripopsky, I have to say, not a fan. He at least has some form of personality as your generic skeevy vendor, but generic is the key word there. They are generic. So generic that I think I'm gonna put them right below the termites. One of the things I do really love about Grunty's Revenge is that it's the only game in the series to show us other Breagles. Nice to see other Kazooie-like designs, and they are distinct enough to earn some points. Wish there were more than just white and pink, but hey, you're gonna go a little lower in Gaha tier than some of the others, but I just love that there are new Breagles in Grunty's Revenge. The dolphins are just dolphins. Boring. 1 point above the sheep, I think. Maybe a little bit higher because I do like dolphins, but yeah, I think he can go right there. Bogfoot is just Biggiefoot, but swampy. Boring. I actually don't like this one. You are going on the bottom. Can someone phone the Pokemon Company? Because Rare just ripped off Muck. Yeah, I don't like the Germiloids at all. I think you're gonna go down there. Remember Whiplashes? They're back, but a scorpion tail now. And that's not good enough for me. You're gonna go a little bit below the actual Whiplashes. Green Spooko is just Teehee, but on the GBA. Boring. Just because it really is the same enemy, I think I'm gonna put them together, right there. The dumbest thing about Alfred Peacock is his name. It is lame. The second dumbest thing about Alfred Peacock is his van's name. Mr. Drippy does not sound very enticing. Otherwise, he's just not interesting. I guess high D tier. That makes sense to me. The Maggie birds are just birds. Boring. I'll put you next to the caterpillar because that's what you eat, I think. So you know how the Clinkers got bad marks for just being pieces of poop? Well, combine that with the crappy writing of Grunty's Revenge, and you get Mrs. Squitter, a thoroughly forgettable character who needs to be flushed. I mean, look at this image. This is literally just a piece of poop. Same with her children. I do not care at all for these little turds. We already had the Great Mighty Pooh by this point, and you have to try better. But I mean, I'm not gonna separate them from their mom, so there you go. The Snowies are just snowflakes. Boring. You're gonna go pretty low. I find this very uninspired. Miss Bucket is nice and all, but I'm sorry, I just don't like the design. It's the same reason I don't like Vendy from Yooka-Laylee. It's too Uncanny Valley for me. This isn't the worst thing ever, but I am gonna put it pretty low. I actually like this worse than Piddles. The Livewire enemy is yet another example of this is probably a hazard, not a character, but I'm counting it because I want to be thorough. Anyway, not good. D tier. Red Spooko is just Green Spooko, but red, which also means that Red Spooko is just Teehee, but on the GBA and red because of the transitive property. Boring, and it made me reference a math thing, so bad. It is just a recolor, so it's actually not going to be that low on the list compared to the Green Spooko. We've now got the only character who is exclusive to Banjo-Pilot, Steamy, these fire dragons that appear in the lava levels. Blink and you'll miss them, but I appreciate that they're just kind of vibin', not really a threat to anybody. Still, not all that great. I think you can go in, like, the lower middle tiers. I'll put you right above the Super Stash. There's 3 species of animals walking around Showdown Town, and their dialogue is... well, I can't remember any of it except for what they say when you assault them, so I'm judging them entirely on that. The rhinos are the funniest, calling out how stupid you are for attacking a big beastie. I actually do think it's enough to just barely get them into Gaha tier. The pigs are the least memorable, talking about having relatives in the police force because that joke is still funny. Also, the pig design in this game kinda sucks. You gotta go into Stinky Bunion tier, my man. Then we have the penguins, and while it may be too damn hot for a penguin to just be walking around here, I'm glad they have penguins to begin with. Weird that it took them until this game to have a penguin character in the series, and they may be relegated to background characters, but I like them regardless. I think you're gonna go just below the rhinos. And also, I think I changed my mind. I think I gotta lower the eyeball plant a little bit. It's just looking at me and I'm just like, no, you don't deserve to be anywhere but the bottom of this tier. Do you remember the ghost in Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts? I didn't until writing this script because this gameplay mechanic is pretty stupid. Just a way to block the best crates from you right away, and I have a theory that these crates were super locked because the devs realized just how easy it is to collect crates out of sequence. Anyway, they're ghosts who sit around until you honk your horn at them. I'm giving them a low score simply because I hate how they're essentially a roadblock. I mean, they're not worse than Trophy Thomas or the Kids, so I'm gonna put it right there. Last thing to do is rate all the grunt bots, and let's just go rapid fire because I'm sure you're tired of me talking about all these characters. I know I am. Nudger is standard and boring. C tier. Rammer is a little better because of the angry eyes. Bottom of B tier. Sticker is just a cube. C tier. Sucker has a funny name, and I guess the design makes sense. Middle to C tier. Blower has a funny name, but also looks like a speaker, and he's lame. High D tier. I don't remember Lighteners at all, but no thanks. You're kind of at the bottom of Stinky Bunion. Shooter is exactly as it says on the tin. It's actually not a terrible design, so I'm gonna put you right there. Cutter looks stupid. Right there. I genuinely cannot tell you if rusters are in the final game or not, but not a fan. Yeah, you're actually pretty bad. I'm gonna put you right there. Exploders are annoying, and the design is dumb. Not too high above the ruster. Speaking of dumb, look at the disabler. He's a goober, but not a fun goober. I think this one's gotta go in the Hailfire tier, right there. Floater, I hardly knew her. I don't know, I've got nothing for this guy. I guess you can go right there. Alright, no jokes for this one. Bouncer is a unique design, and I like there just being a passive obstacle. Well done, team. Genuinely, just because this does improve a lot, I am going to put it in A tier. Swallower is a funny name, and also one I'm not sure is in the game as well. Whatever, this is just a snowball. D tier. Final character time, it's Scoffer, and he is dull as shit. You are a Stinky Bunion. Well, that's the definitive Banjo-Kazooie character tier list, or rather, my personal rankings on way too many Banjo-Kazooie characters. Obviously, this is all my personal opinion, and your character ranking will be different. As I said, the tier list template will be in the description if you want to make your own ranking. And now we come to the part of the video where I introduce my new channel and say goodbye to this one, so if you don't really care about that, you can stop watching the video now, it's alright with me. Anyway, I am pleased to announce my new channel, The Grey Jinjo. This will follow in a similar vein to CloudConnection where I talk about games, but with more of a focus on the lesser known titles, as well as fun projects I want to try out. So less Mario, Sonic, Zelda, and Banjo, and more forgotten series, franchises that haven't had a game in a long time, handheld versions of console titles, or obscure ports that have flown under the radar, as well as whatever the hell else I want to do. There's already 2 videos uploaded to that channel that you can watch right now, a video on the original Snowboard kids, and a video looking at every Pixar game released for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. You can find links to all of that in the comments or description. Now, even though this is the last CloudConnection project, I will upload one final video here where I'll look back at the channel, highlight some of my favorite moments, and talk about the evolution of CloudConnection and why I'm choosing to move on. Not sure when that will be out, but hopefully soon. For now, I want to thank every single one of you who's watched my stuff over the years. Your support has been incredible, and this channel has grown into something much larger than I ever expected. And even though this channel is ending, the journey is far from over. So whether you've been around for years, or you liked this video and you want to see more new stuff, well, you know where I'll be. See you on the new channel, and for the final time, this is CloudConnection, signing off.